Morning, everybody. It's exactly 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's the spring equinox today. Exactly 12 hours daylight and 12 hours night time. So at midday today, the sun will be bang over the top of the equator. And it's the dawn chorus time. And there's a blackbird singing right above my head in the middle of the farmyard. What a lovely sound. Oh, listen to that.
Chris Skinner's Countryside Podcast with Matthew Gudgeon.
I'm on Hares Farm again, which is situated not far from Norwich in the east of England. And the wildlife's all around us. It's spring, it's a grey morning, but it's bright and it's mild as well. And our host, the king of the wild frontier himself, Chris Skinner, Farmer Chris.
Good morning, Matthew. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hares Farm, and we're into spring now. We've been following some of the wildflowers which make an early appearance here at the farm. And this morning's no exception, because we're standing in a little green patch in the middle of a 7-acre field. It looks a little bit odd, and I haven't cultivated this little area. There's overwinter wildbird seed mix all around us. It's a small field, 7 acres, surrounded by a huge tall hedge along the bottom there. Sort of dressed up bright white this morning with the blackthorn coming into flower. And down around our feet are tiny little yellow flowers. In about an hour's time, once the sun's up a little bit more, because it's early morning, they'll be open. And the best way to describe them is they look exactly like yellow daisies, but they're not. The plant's name is Tussilago farfara, which that's the Latin name, but the common name says everything about the plant. It's called coltsfoot. And it's also got lots of nicknames, and one that I love is called Son Before Father.
Son before father?
Yes.
Coltsfoot.
Coltsfoot. But you have to think about it, because it's one of nature's most impatient wildflowers. It comes into flower before it comes into leaf. It's really odd. So if we go down on our hands and knees, a little bit, the ground is quite heavy clay. It's not been cultivated for 4 or 5 years, and you can see one here. It's now going to open up, bright yellow. It's about 100 millimetres tall, little scales all the way out the stalk, and no plant leaves around the base of it. And the Tussilago part of it is really an old name for cough, and it used to be used for treating horses that had a bad cough. So, and because the leaves sort of look lung-shaped as well, the early chemists thought that if the leaf or the flower of a particular plant looked like some particular part of the human anatomy, then it would be used as a cure. And so the leaves were ground up and made into a powder together with the little flowers as well, and it was used quite regularly way back then in early times. And lots of flowers to come here. two there just under my hand there, and the whole ground is going to be bright yellow in about a week's time. It really gets us. It's one of nature's most impatient flowers. So I just love all the history to it. But later on, the leaves start to emerge. There's one or two right over there in the distance, and it's called coltsfoot for a reason, because the size of the leaves are about the size of a colt or a young horse's hoof, and they're very soft and downy. I'll just go over on my hands and knees, and we'll have a look on the underside of a leaf. The top is kind of heart-shaped. It does look lung-shaped, and if I look underneath, it's almost white, and it's very soft and furry on the underside of the leaf. And so that's where it gets its common name from, which I said explains everything about the plant. But there's literally hundreds of these yellow flowers to come out. They're really odd. They look really ancient, really, because there's just no leaves. They're just these little bracts on the stalks hugging the little flower stem very closely.
And you mentioned horses. Would a horse graze on that?
Yes, they do graze them. It's really a plant that likes poorly drained, compacted soil, so you'll sometimes see it going around the coasts of the United Kingdom, and sometimes on very poor agricultural land that hasn't been drained, that gets waterlogged, and it seems to like those conditions. But because it comes out really early, the horses that used to graze these fields, many of them were old pastures, would actually graze the leaves. But in a cereal crop, it's quite a problem, because the leaves grow in June and July, and it would be impossible for the binder, and later on the combine, it would clog all the intake augers up on the combine, because there's so much green material. So it's a plant that you don't see quite so much of. Anyway, that's an early one. Just look, there's a flock of pigeons coming in behind us to graze on any grains that are left, and this will be reseeded in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. Once the weather warms up a little bit, it'll be put back to overwinter wild bird seed mix. But as we drove here, a lovely flock of yellowhammers all the way down the hedges that we saw, and it's a lovely time of year before everything comes into leaf shortly and obscures the wildlife. It's a really good time to come out into the countryside.
We even saw a March hare, didn't we?
We
Although
did.
this March hare wasn't mad in the least. He was just having a snooze.
No, he's having a snooze, because they're very busy at night, but we won't go into that. But later on, in about half an hour's time or so, we will be going round the farm looking at some of the hares. We've got a special trick that we use here at the farm to count them, and I've already done 2 or 3 fields, and I'm up to number 34 hares so far, and so we've got 1 field to do, and you can join me for that in a short while.
We're on another part of the farm, and it is getting brighter now, as Chris promised, and it's a really lovely March morning, and we're by one of the little water courses here, a little brook drainage ditch coming through, and it looks full of water at the moment. And Chris, what have we got here? It looks like you've got a lot of nettles.
Yeah, exactly that, Matthew. Stinging nettles and water flowing through at the bottom of the ditch.
Looks lovely and clean, though.
And it is. You can see there's a gravel bottom. There'll be freshwater shrimp in there quite shortly. And that's joining the River Tass, about half a mile from where we're standing. It's one of the tributaries, one of the feeder streams for the river. And on the other bank there, which is south-facing, we've got celandines just opening up. They shut up at night and then open up sort of mid-morning, and bright yellow flowers. Just if you're walking anywhere near damp ground this spring, watch out for celandines. One of my favourite flowers. I think I've said this before, but William Wordsworth described it beautifully. Bright as the sun himself. Perfect description of them. Lovely. So they love that wet habitat, feet in the water almost, and growing really well. But you picked out stinging nettles, and about 3 weeks ago we looked at one of the nettle family with the word dead in the name, and we looked at the red dead nettle. And it's got a cousin which has also got dead in the name, and it also comes in flower really, really early. And as a schoolboy, I used to pull the little white flowers, because it's called white dead nettle, out, and there'd be a tiny drop of nectar at the bottom of it. You could suck that. And then you'd pull the plant out and chase the girls with it, because they thought it was a stinging nettle at the nearby school, Notre Dame School in Norwich. That was a favourite trick.
Well, you were a terror,
They'd scream and run away, so it wasn't really the right intention. But here we got a patch of stinging nettles. Don't have my hands on these again. These are stingers, but you can see some in amongst them are slightly paler. Can you see there's 5 there, one near you, and there's a large one here in full flower. And we used this word, I think, last week to describe the way these particular plants flower. It's called a whorl. The flowers go right the way around the stem, and they have a hood on them. And they're just opening up this week. So usually around the time of the spring equinox, they come into flower.
They're almost orchid-like, those flowers,
They are really beautiful. There's another member which also doesn't sting, which comes into flower late May and into June. It's called yellow archangel, and that looks exactly the same, but none of those sting. Whereas if I put my hand in there, they're stingers. But I'm lucky, I've got hands like leather and I don't get stung. But if I asked you to do it, you'd go ouch, because these freshly emerged stinging nettles, which are also really valuable, you'll see lots of butterflies coming out of hibernation at this time of year, things like peacocks, small tortoiseshells as well, also come out of hibernation, and they'll be looking for these young stinging nettles. They're the same butterflies that were perhaps on your Michaelmas daisies last autumn. They hibernate, so their life's about 6 months long only, and then they lay their eggs early spring and then they die. That's the butterflies, but this is a really important plant for them. Early source of nectar, just to give them that energy after that long 6 months sleep over the winter months. And white dead nettle, which this one is perfect. You can see the leaves look exactly like the stinging nettles here. Ouch, I did get stung there. I put my hand down backwards and touched one of the stingers. But yes, so you can see it's got a
serrated edge.
Yes, serrated edge, exactly like the stinging nettles. Both of them look the same. So when it's got that word dead in the name, so red dead nettle, white dead nettle, and the yellow archangel as well, all look similar, but they don't sting. So this is perfect, absolutely perfect early provender for those freshly emerged butterflies from hibernation. Remember, those butterflies hibernate as adults, and I had a treat during the week, just having my lunch, looked out the window, and a male brimstone flew past the window, bright sulphur yellow, probably gave its names to butterfly itself, because it just looked like butter flying. Love it. So there we are, another couple of early spring wildflowers. Now we've got some proper work to do. We got some. Are you good at maths?
You might have hit upon one of my weak points.
So we're going to do a partridge and hare count now. So we've got to hop back in the truck, and I'll show you how we do it.
Raven. Chris, we were just heading off to another part of the farm and you've suddenly said...
Yes, raven, Matthew.
A raven?
Yes, it just flew past us and it's come down on the pasture next to 2 carrion crows and it's double the size of it. I saw one about a year ago after a report that somebody walking on the farm had seen a raven here, and I said, no, I don't think so. And it's a thundering great bird, and it's landed way out in the middle of the field, and you can see the size difference, strutting very confidently. Really, it's looking for carrion probably, but it's feeding out with the carrion crow, which is pretty large itself, and it's a good double the size. I could tell the way it flew past us immediately. It was something completely different, which it is.
But really, we shouldn't have ravens here, should we?
No, they're just beginning to get moving southwards. Something's happening, whether they're being tolerated more. The only place you see them south of here is in the Tower of London, obviously, but really, they're a bird of deserted coasts, and particularly up in north-west and north-east Scotland, and they feed on carrion. But that's a great big bird.
So this one on the right is a raven.
That's a raven. You are so lucky.
Have you got binoculars?
Yes, I have got binoculars here.
I'd quite like to see this.
I
haven't been to the Tower of London for a long time.
Just focus it in for you. So
course.
what you will notice is a huge bill. And, yep, there we are. I've got him. I'll pass the binoculars over for you.
Let's have a look.
See if you can focus in. He's a good 150 metres away from us, but definitely a raven. You make sure he's on the right. He's just
shiny black plumage.
That's right, yes, and a huge down curved bill there. Sort of massive meat-eating tool. Yeah, wow, you are so lucky.
Yeah, he's a big lad, isn't he?
He is a big boy. Yes. Yeah, that's a first for me to see. I had one fly over the top of me, and as it flew over, it was croaking, so it was a completely different sound to carrion crows and obviously jackdaws and rooks as well. It's a really deep, throaty call, and it has been here feeding with the large flock of jackdaws and rooks. And I thought it would have gone by now, found a mate, but it hasn't.
So they're obviously accepted then?
Yes,
by the other birds.
It was. Yeah, it's all member of the same family. And for a moment, I thought it was a buzzard-sized bird flew past with the other two.
Yeah, you have a look, Chris.
Yeah, I'll have another look.
Yeah.
I just feast my eyes. There he goes. You can see the comparison in the size. There, that's flying next to a carrion crow. They've flown away, and that's a massive bird. Yeah, well done.
Raven.
Raven.
Hey.
Wow. Oh, yes, that's a treat.
Oh, I can see it. There we are. There's a deer leaping over there.
Chinese water deer.
Going for his morning jog.
Good. This is the field we're going to do the survey on, Matthew. And yes, so Chinese water deer, very common at the farm here. And we're now, they stopped and watched us. So now this is a special trick that we do. Kestrel in front of us, going to hover. Now, just flying across in front and just landing in the tree there. Rich pickings here, and we've got some string laid out.
Oh, it's a piece of blue rope.
Nylon string, and we just drive over the top of it like that. And I get out of the car and hook it on the drawbar, and we then drive out and we turn in a circle, quite a big circle, enclosing about 6 or 7 acres at a time. And we just count the hares, and particularly I'm a long-term member of the Partridge Count scheme run by the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust, and each year about this time I do the spring partridge count. And 2 species we count. One's the red-legged partridge, and the other's the English partridge, our only native species. Skylark just come up, 2 just hovering away.
Really fast wing movements.
They are, yes. They're display
hovering.
flying. And oh wow, that's mating for you at speed, or courtship flying, I should say, where the male attacks a female and then vice versa. They take it in turns to kind of try and crash into each other. Right, I'll just hop out and hop the rope onto the back of the truck.
How long is this rope?
250 metres long. Skylark behind you, so we just pop it onto the back of the car, and it's all stretched out behind us. And so what we then do is drive off. It doesn't hurt anything, it goes over the top of the cereals, and it's just enough disturbance to pop any hairs up. There's our first hare running away down there. Yes. My loud voice has given the game away already.
He's way over in the distance.
So
do we count him then?
I'm still counting, yes. So we've got our total so far, and I hope with the addition of this field, fingers crossed, we'll get up to 50 50 hares in total. Another one there in front of us, just running along the horizon towards those trees. But anyway, we'll see if we find any. And we've now got 4 skylarks right above us.
If this was a skylark survey, we'd really be good in, wouldn't we?
Yes, we would. Yes, just shows you if you give wildlife the chance to thrive, it will come back. And skylarks, obviously, a red list species. And that's just, I mean, we're blowing the numbers away like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, hop in the truck. This is the easy bit now, just counting.
So we've seen 2 hares on this piece of property here.
Good. Right, off we go. So it's very easy. So we will be able to look beside us shortly. So we'll pull out the string in a nice straight line to start with. 4-wheel drive in. And now we can start to do our first turn. Any moment.
This is about where you saw the second hare up here.
Yes, up here, yes. So now we'll turn. And you just have to look slightly behind you and you'll see the string going across the top of the crop.
I can see it, yes.
Yes.
Now we're going back in a different direction.
Yes, and we're about 100 yards lower down the field. And there's one right in front of us. Perfect. So still counting. I'm getting close to 40 hares on this morning's count now. It started nice and early. You have to do it all on one day, otherwise there's a danger of double counting.
And it's on a specific amount of land?
Yes, it is. The area I'm done today will be 220 hectares. Another one, good, 41. And another one here, 42. These are all individuals, so we're not double counting.
Another one straight in front of us.
Yes, look at that.
Oh, wow. They're looking really good nick, actually.
They are. They're very healthy. They're a mixture of jack and doe hares. Nothing, I promise you, is being hurt or disturbed unnecessarily, but it is important to monitor what you've got. And
because they're so difficult to see, aren't they?
They're nigh impossible to see in a crop like this, but I am eagle-eyed for any partridges that we put up. So that's sort of equal, doing 2 jobs at once.
But the count for the partridge isn't such a successful
no,
thing, is it?
Not at the moment, but we're not giving up yet. There's the string on the other side of us, so it's going to follow us round.
So actually 250 metres.
Yes, it's
300 odd yards.
That's the length of it, yes. And there's a little sort of heavy, another one, 43.
God, they really go the last minute, don't
yes, they do. Yeah, so excellent. 43. My target is 50. I've got 1 field to do after you've gone, and that will give me my total. So it looks as though we're going to get to 50.
On a relatively small piece of Norfolk countryside.
Yes, yeah, you wouldn't imagine that they're quite large mammals here. Each morning when I come here and feed down the hedges by hand, I always see, without fail, muntjac deer and Chinese water deer, and when I'm lucky, actually see some roe deer as well. And it's a really good way because it's such an area for me to do. I'm doing it single-handed. It would be nigh impossible to walk that. You'd just get a taster of what's there, but the partridges are really difficult to see. They're particularly the English grey partridge, Perdix perdix. They hunker down and almost become invisible in a crop like this.
Plus they are very rare, aren't they? I can see a hare behind us.
Yes, another one. 44.
I spotted him in the wing mirror.
Yep. So a really harmless way of doing a count, and quick as well. So we've a few minutes we've been going, we've done less than 15 minutes, I suppose. Another hare there.
Oh, where?
There. And 2.
Got him.
2.
Yes.
There, squatted down.
Oh.
Hunkered down. Now they've disappeared. And they're...
Oh, there he goes.
That's one gone.
And the other one is hunkered really.
Yes, there you can just see the silhouette. Now that's what I'm talking about. Large mammal, virtually no cover just there, and it's all, to all intents and purposes, not visible, is it? It just doesn't look as though it exists there. So that is perfect.
He'll be up in a second because that blue string will come through.
There we are. This is the last bit.
Oh, there we are. Whee!
Yes, yeah, look at that. 47. I think we're going to make the 50 on this field alone, and I've got one more to do, which is a very promising field. And another one.
Yes.
Another one there. 48.
Wow. So you've seen probably double figures just on this field alone.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and I'm glad you're here because I think anybody listening would think I'm making this up. And
I mean, this is a large field, but still, it's
that's pretty impressive.
It really does.
Well,
foster.
I've got a smile on my face.
That's
Chinese water deer.
Chinese.
Yes, and look here on the right, another one.
Oh, going at top speed, a hare.
49.
Ears pointed skyward. A classic outline.
Yes, yep, and this is their home. They won't leave this field. Look, Matthew, in front. There you go, number 50.
That one looking completely unconcerned.
Yes, yep. And that will conclude the little circuit that we've done. We're now going to go over the top of the piece of string.
Now, have you ever forgotten to not
to drive off,
detach the string and drive off on the public roads with your 250-yard piece of string?
I do suffer from memory problems these days, but no, I haven't done that yet. Oh dear. They say how long's a piece of string, but that's the way we do it. Nothing's harmed whatsoever. The hares are not panicked whatsoever. And the sad thing is, and it's typical of much of the Norfolk countryside where we are anyway, we didn't see any partridges, and it's perfect partridge territory.
Skylarks really are enjoying this early spring weather. We've had lots and lots of emails, haven't we, Chris?
Yes.
Which is terrific.
Absolutely amazing response to the podcast, Matthew.
Anna James says, we always have some blue tits tapping at our bedroom windows early in the morning at this time of year, but this year we've had the blue tits joined by sparrows, who are even more persistent, and they tap at different windows all around the house, all times during the day. Can you tell us what they're doing?
Yes, almost certainly they're the males of the species, the male house sparrow and the male blue tit. The male blue tit's really difficult to distinguish from the female, but basically they're seeing their reflection in the window, and if it's a male, he just says, I'm not having another male in my territory, so I'm going to try and get rid of it by pecking at the window, not realising it's just a reflection. So nice and easy to answer that one.
Oliver says, having listened to the podcast last week, please can you, if you can see them for a split second, confirm that these videos that I'm sending you are field mice. They moved into my poor feed house while it was hibernating. I've since put a couple more feed houses up for the hedgehogs. And it's comical watching the mice watching the hedgehog at night. The video is not speeded up at all. They're fast. I love them. They're so funny.
Yes, well done. You've got long-tailed field mice, not house mice there. They've got large ears and an extremely long tail, and they move incredibly fast. They have a second name. They're also called wood mice.
Got another email here from Norwich, Thorpe St Andrew, and it's David Evan Jones. Hello, David. Dear Chris Skinner, our nest box has been attacked. We've got some very good quality, not very good quality pictures to tell the story as well. And he goes through all the story here with a great tit showing interest in the nest box and a squirrel as well. But after a few days nibbling, the hole is a lot bigger. The nest box today from outside is now in the video here as well, and sadly I've not seen any recent visits by the tits. Driven off perhaps? Was the squirrel rather prematurely hoping to find eggs?
Almost certainly. There's a picture from the video and you can see the hole in the blue tit nest box with the camera above there is ginormous.
So that hole has been enlarged?
Yes, and the birds won't use it anymore, so it will remain empty. The question is there anything he can do to stop that? And yes, you can get a really large steel washer for the right sized hole, about 35 millimetre hole in, but if the washer is really large, you screw that over the nest entrance hole and that stops the squirrels biting further into the wood. So that's a brilliant way of stopping it without having to replace all your lovely nest box. So thank you.
And let's have a look. Oh yes, we've got one here from Darren, who loves your podcast. Darren in Cromer, informative and wonderful, he says.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes.
I'm sending you a picture of my house with a small hole just above my kitchen window. For the past 6 years, this has been used by blue tits for a nest. I've seen them for the last few weeks flying back and forth. I wondered how many times they have young, and if it is passed down to the next generation as a nest, or whether a new pair would take it on. Many thanks, guys, and keep it up.
There's the hole in the house, Matthew, just in the brickwork there. So the first question is, the nest box can be used again next year if you're lucky, and it generally isn't passed on from one generation to the next, quite simply because the only ones to survive from last year is one adult and one young, and yet when the blue tits breed this spring, they will have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 youngsters, and the mortality rate for young blue tits, wait for it, is around 90%. So the average for next year is one adult from the previous year and one young from the previous year. So that's it. And
that's a pretty tough attrition rate, isn't it?
Absolutely, but nevertheless, they are really common birds. They do really, really well, and so that little hole there in your brickwork is incredibly valuable, and we should see more of them out in the countryside. Well done.
Julian in Halesworth says, thank you for the permissive walks on the farm. Had a great day coming here. Spring song and birds started to show, and we saw comet and brimstone butterfly.
Yes, well done. And also went bird watching immediately after. And look at the list.
Yes, there's a whole list here of green woodpecker and nuthatch and tree creepers. That's a particular favourite of mine.
Oh yes, I'll see if I can get you up close one of these days.
Red kite, kestrel, bullfinches, goldcrest.
Yes, yeah, I know. I'm incredibly proud of what's here, as I've said all along, and just thank you.
Now, hello Chris, says Sheila Hall. Listening to your podcast, I had to smile at the last item about the unmating dunnocks. It reminded me of my late father, who grew up in the countryside in Norfolk in the early 20th century and knew a fair bit about nature and wildlife. One day, when in his latter years, he looked out of the kitchen window and said, "Well, I never seen that afore, but now I know why we used to call him pickasses." You missed the video and the question last week, Matthew. It came in late, so I answered the particular question, and it was a fabulous video in some Augustins in Norwich, in a balcony high up above the city, trees all around, and it showed a house sparrow, a dunnock, the backside of it being pecked by the male to check it hadn't mated with another one. That's why I was lost for words, because I couldn't find the word to describe what we were seeing, but I called it unmated. John in Aldborough says, this is another one about frogs. I've had a wildlife pond in the garden for many years. Normally, lots of frogs. This year, none. There's also a large pond on the Aldborough Village Green. Again, no frogs.
Yes, it's quite common this year. That disease, it's a kind of bacterial infection called red leg, to give it its short name, which frogs suffer from, and it's so distressing when you have a pond and you just find 5 or 6 frogs laying there dead, looking a bit bloodied, and it's quite likely to be in that. But bear in mind that we're getting more and more otters out into the Norfolk countryside in particular. The sort of headquarters of the Otter Trust is at Earsham, just through over the Suffolk border there, and that was sort of brought to life by Philip Ware, an early otter enthusiast, and so that's always possible. Pike will eat them. Herons eat frogs as well, so they really are part of the food chain, and it's always sad when they disappear.
Now, we talk about the emails coming in their droves, but of course most of the fan mail for this podcast is to your dog,
Yes.
Rat, who had a starring role last week. Catherine Harris says, I wonder about dogs, though, running free during bird nesting season. Do you have any concerns?
Yes, I do, particularly on nature reserves where it's crucial that because of the numbers of people, and people love to walk their dogs, they do need to be on a lead and kept at close quarters as well. So here at High Ash Farm, we have the permissive walks, and I mow right up to the edges of the hedge on the permissive walks. There's about 7 miles of those, and people ask me why I do that, because it's really good nesting habitat. But the last thing I want to do is for birds like pheasants or yellowhammers, two birds at both ends of the size scale there, nesting on the edge, because they'll get disturbed by dogs even if they're on a short lead. So Rat, my dog, is trained really carefully not to interfere with anything nesting. He knows not to do that, so he's a little bit unusual because he's kind of learnt what we call field craft, and he's a really good boy, so he accompanies me all day. And it is a problem, so particularly if the dogs are off the lead, particularly this time of the year when we've got seals pupping out on the Norfolk coastline, and they're extremely vulnerable then. So if you are out and you have a dog walking out in the countryside at this time of the year, please keep your dog under close control.
Thank you, Catherine, for that very timely email. Thanks to all our correspondents. We guaranteed to read all of them. Not time to feature all of them.
No, the pile this week was phenomenal,
a
Matthew.
bumper bundle, as someone once said.
It's so rewarding to know that the podcast is listened to, not just here in Norfolk, but all over the UK and beyond. And it just sort of warms the cockles of your heart. Thank you, everybody, for responding to the podcast.
Email address chris@countrysidepodcast.co.uk. And we're afloat next week.
We are, yes. We're going to be 3 men in a boat. You can't wait.